doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Kwast. How you doing, Steve?
Hey, very good. How are you two?
Great. So look, you're my classmate, 1986, and I have to make sure you're the real guy. So we're going to do a secret handshake here. So see if you get the right response. Fast, neat, average.
Friendly, good.
Excellent. You're the right guy. Okay. So we'll tell the audience later what that is. But Bill is really interested in this subject, and I'm going to let him throw the first question. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us, gentlemen. So listening to your comments that we played at the top of the show, one of the first things that strikes me is this notion of energy is in fact a strategic either advantage or disadvantage. Could you expand on that, I gather, from your thoughts?
Yeah, energy has always been a strategic advantage for those that dominate the marketplace and subjugate people to use their method of energy delivery and the revenue that comes from that, and then the economic power that comes from that then provides national security. So it's kind of at the beginning of the food chain, if you will, of the progress of all humanity, but also the power of the economics of a nation to do all the things that energy does for your peace, your prosperity, your security, and your health. So like making steel, for example, and so on. So it is, but it, so it can be an advantage, but it also can inhibit progress where you're trapped in one paradigm of energy, and that paradigm defends the paradigm to the death. The military industrial complex, if you will, or I'll add the military industrial congressional complex, where the lobbyists convince Congress that any new thing is dangerous, dumb, or different and should be rejected, and the money should go to perpetuate what has been. This is what inhibits innovation and energy. If you don't get the energy piece of that right, you inhibit the progress of the human race, especially by a country like America that has the innovative magic sauce, the superpower of innovation to really transform the energy market.
So by paradigm, are you speaking of things like our notion of, hey, everything has to be plugged into a wall. We have to be pulling power constantly to run our daily lives from power grid and so forth. Is that yes. Kind of an example of where you're going with that?
Right. It would be like people in 1898 that used horses to get to market and used candles to light their home and wood to heat their home. And you said, give all that paradigm up and you'll have 2 cars in every garage, a man on the moon, a computer in your pocket, and roads everywhere and power lines electrifying everything in your life. They would have thought you were, you needed to be burned at the stake.
So it would seem that there are possibilities that many people either don't know about or don't consider applicable today.
Yeah.
And I suspect we're edging on some areas that maybe can and can't necessarily be talked about yet.
Sure.
Could you give us some examples of maybe some of the areas that would be possibilities going forward?
So like any transition to a new paradigm, it has many different winners and losers because that's the nature of innovation. And the moment you have a country like the CCP choosing a winner, then you're going to have an advantage over them because innovation is like a garden. You plant a lot of seeds and some blossom and some do not, and you don't know. So anybody that historically tries to pick winners and losers is going to lose. You have to let the free market and make the choice, because innovation in its core sense is something that's novel, meaning it's not been done before, and useful, meaning people want it and are willing to pay money for it. So the energy sector transition to the new era will be the same way. And here are some examples that are in the public domain. So there's not, we don't have to get anywhere close to, tiptoeing on the edge of classifications. Let's take, so you're going to see technologies like helium-3, modular nuclear, basically small nuclear reactors that are safer. Your kitchen table has a higher probability of going off high order at the molecular level than these nuclear reactors. The technology has come that far. So people that are afraid of nuclear just don't know the state of the technology, and they're throwing back to the 60s when they had to get under the table and worry about a nuclear detonation or a power plant going high order like Fukushima or some of the other disasters we've had, like 3 Mile Island. So let's just talk about some of them real quick. So you have helium-3, you have nuclear, you have hydrogen, you have solar power from space, meaning that you can take the high intensity energy of the sun in space. You can convert it to a radio wave. You can beam it to Earth, which we've done. The X-37 has been demonstrating this. We know it can be done if you just build it, the infrastructure, and then you convert it back into electricity on the planet at 80% efficiencies, where right now we're in the 20s or low 30% efficiencies with any of our power plants, whether it's nuclear, fossil fuel, wind, wave, solar. They're all in the 20s and low 30s at best. And just taking the sun's energy that can go through the atmosphere and the day and night, because the sun is always shining in space at high intensity, like 450 degrees Fahrenheit. We have, so all of these will usher in. But let me just give you one quick example, then I'll stop for the follow-on questions. Let's take helium-3. Helium-3 is very hard to find on the Earth because it cannot get through our gravitational field and our atmosphere. But it can get to the moon. And so on the moon, we know there's enough helium-3 on the moon, if we were to mine it and bring it back to Earth, to power the entire current electrical demand for thousands of years, for the whole planet. That's how powerful helium-3 is. And right now, for example, a few weeks ago, you saw Microsoft announce their quantum computing capability, but they have to cool it down to 80 millikelvin, meaning 1,000th of 1 degree of Kelvin, which is like negative 276 degrees. Again, the numbers maybe are approximate. Let's not get hung up on that. But the best capability we have to cool something that cold for quantum to actually work is hydrogen, and it can only get down to 1 Kelvin. It can't get down to the kind of temperatures you need to really expand helium-3 as a source. And helium-3 is millions of dollars for even a small amount. But China is already on the moon, on the far side of the moon, mining helium-3 for their quantum industry. And the first nation that can actually operationalize quantum, like we know can be done, it's been proven, if they can affordably have the energy to cool that quantum down to an operational temperature, will dominate the globe. They'll be able to know every secret that's ever been and work at a speed where no other economy or nation could keep up. There's another example of an energy source, helium-3, that is so rare on Earth, it's too expensive. It is abundant in space. And this is why space is such a powerful economy of the future, because just the simple helium-3 could be enough energy to make China the dominant economy on energy for the next several thousand years.
Steve, there was a report that came out from Google that they did a quantum test and it literally altered the magnetic field of the US or the Earth. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. And, so quantum is demonstrating some things that surprise us, that make us realize we know less than we think about the universe and how it's put together. And it's not just the magnetic distortions that they're observing. It's the fact that quantum essentially can change space and time. You've heard people talk about this, some of our chief scientists and so on, and they're not talking about time travel necessarily, although it reveals that time travel is possible because quantum is doing it. The quantum elements are doing it, and because you affiliate two molecular elements in the quantum realm, you move them apart, and it doesn't matter the distance. They react with one another instantaneously. Okay, so basically, they are the communication is acting faster than the speed of light, meaning it's instantaneous. And if it can do that at several hundred miles or several thousand miles, it can do it at several billion miles. So now we can see, we don't know why or how, but the universe is connected where at the subatomic level, there is a communication source that is almost infinite. And when we start tapping into our knowledge, and this is what Einstein talked about. He talked about, hey, this relativity stuff is just a caveman's approach for what we know now, but I know it's wrong. And in future generations, we're going to start discovering how little we know about how the universe is put together. And for me, quantum is really the evidence of God.
That's fascinating interpretation. I want to expand on that in a few minutes. So what you were discussing earlier, this notion of things communicating and being in some way connected that we don't quite understand yet, is some may have heard of this as quantum entanglement. Yes.
Yes, that's it.
And so the ability to somehow gain knowledge and control over that could drastically alter our ability to do all those things: communicate, interpret, possibilities, interpret actions. Yeah. It really is fascinating. It's interesting also to me that quietly in I believe 2020, third quarter, if I recall correctly, there was an organization underneath the U.S. government that formed and began, I believe, research work in addition to other things, quantum.gov. And I was lucky enough to sit in on a few of the very early meetings. And you could tell even the scientists were kind of, in an interesting situation. They were being guided by folks in terms of the big goals, yet the pathway to get to those goals was as yet quite unknown. It was fascinating set of discussions. Have you been looking at that?
Yes. So, and let's tie this back to energy. So, for example, if China is the first one to access space for the helium-3 that can fuel a quantum economy, now when you combine quantum sensing, quantum communication, and quantum computing, now you can, in the military, we call it the OODA loop. Now you can observe what's going on around you, understand it, communicate it in a way that nobody else can crack. And you can crack every secure communication of everybody else in the world at greater than the speed of light, meaning instantaneous. When you have that kind of speed of advantage of understanding the strategic environment, being able to communicate with dominance, preventing your enemy from ever communicating in a way that is not revealed and that you can see, you gain an economic dominance that could last for thousands of years until we figure out ways of cracking into that kind of dominance. And it's an energy dominance at the foundation, and then a technology dominance that comes out of it. And quantum is a good poster child for why energy is so important, and why the energy inventions are being stifled and suffocated because of our regulatory environment, our ideology that we can take no risk, and that economic security and safety is more important than progress. I mean, it goes against everything cultural about the American spirit of the pioneer, the maverick, the people willing to take risk to try new things, and failure being a part of progress and innovation. Elon Musk has done it well. I can remember in the Air Force when Elon Musk would blow up a Falcon 9 in 2011, 2012, and the leadership of the Air Force would come to me and say, "See, Steve, you're wrong. Elon Musk is a Ponzi scheme. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's blowing up rockets." And I would say, well, remember, that General Schriever—
We blew up a few.
General Schriever blew up 12 rockets before we had the first one that worked for our ICBM nuclear triad. And the only reason he didn't get fired is because he played golf with Eisenhower every weekend, and Eisenhower protected him. So we are trapped in the same problem with our energy market in America, where the military industrial congressional complex and all of these private companies that create our energy in old ways are not willing to change because they're at the trough of money, And anybody that comes in to disrupt that industry is a villain, and they are attacked. Legally, they're attacked. Personally, they're attacked. They're attacked just like we were attacked in the Air Force for talking about the fact that new technologies were going to change the character of war for the Air Force. And we were ostracized for it because we were not part of the team. We were not, the fighter pilots with a scarf around our neck that thought the single seat, small fuel bladder, low weapon load fighter was going to be the dominant king of the hill. We learned that about the Army. The cavalry was not the king of the hill in World War II as it was in World War I. And the battleship was not the king of the sea in World War II as it World War I, because we invented mechanization for the Army that replaced the cavalry. And we invented air power that replaced the battleship.
Well, Steve, as a helicopter pilot in the Air Force, I feel your pain because the fighter pilot mafia is real. I have a question. I see the last 4 years and more, and maybe the buildup, this regulatory issue is maybe some foreign actors there to stop our advance. I mean, what's going on in Ukraine? What's going on? Getting our focus away from what we really should be focusing on. I think there may be, some foreign powers involved in that. What say you?
Yeah, so this is the genius of President Trump and the geopolitics of this, where President Trump is smart enough to not only see the future, surround himself with people that can understand these changes and trend lines of technology that change fate, but also build relationships of trust with other world leaders where we build on our common ground. So yes, there is an international force trying to prevent us from moving forward because they are in control, they have power, they have money, and they want to perpetuate the past system, the deep state, or whatever you want to call it. And it's global. It's not just in America. Yeah. So Xi Jinping has to deal with the same thing. But these leaders are building on a common ground where uplifting the human condition with the sovereignty of each culture with its own beauty and its own magic needs to break out of the slavery that we've been put under by the geopolitics of the current model of money, power, and control. So yes, there's evil forces in that, and there's good forces, and President Trump is on the side of good, and he is going to break out and avoid war at the same time. It's a brilliant diplomatic, geopolitical, and strategic move based on economics, and then downstream from that, security and prosperity.
So one follow-up, the energy grid we have is a huge liability. I mean, it can be shut down immediately with an EMP or whatever. Right. You're talking about technology that would leapfrog that and make us less susceptible, correct?
It is. That's true. But we also have to fix the current because this journey takes time. And this is why colleagues of mine, when I was the commander of Air Education and Training Command down in San Antonio, I was able to partner with the, a lot of very smart people and CPS Energy down in San Antonio. And we started the Electromagnetic Defense Initiative. And this was an initiative that's now a White House hallmark program. And this was under President Trump, where we are demonstrating to all these private energy companies by using technology out of our federally funded research labs, like all of them, with technologies that are affordable for energy companies to put into their grids. And so we used a circuit down there in San Antonio and proved that you can affordably make your grid resilient to electromagnetic pulse attacks or natural occurrences like the Carrington event that took place in 1859 that melted every telegraph punch code because 3,000 volts went through all of North America. Luckily, it was only telegraph at the time that was vulnerable. Now we built an entire nation vulnerable to that. And so there is a journey underway because we started that Electromagnetic Defense Initiative back in 2018. Actually 2017, and it is now running full steam with the Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense, all engaged with a public-private partnership to demonstrate and eventually migrate our power grid to be resilient to man-made attacks and Mother Nature attacks.
Interesting.
Wow.
Bill?
A few minutes ago, you mentioned some of the capability that would put whatever country had it, assuming us, in really a dominating position, the ability to instantly break other people's, secure codes and so forth. That presumes that we or whoever has that is acting, I believe, needing to be acting in a righteous way because, as we've seen over the last months, years, perhaps, there's the possibility of somebody getting into power that is not acting in a righteous way and then having that capability, that ability to dominate, sounds scary, ominous, even.
Yep. It always has been that way. For example, you look back at 1904 and 1905, and the articles written that it would be immoral to operationalize the aircraft or the airplane because you could drop bombs on somebody's head. So every new technology can be used for good or evil. This is why we have to break the back of the fake news. This is why you guys are so important, because if we can shine a light on truth around the world and on people using things in ways that are not consistent with the fact that we are moral creatures, and that if we do not have a moral foundation, no constitution and no culture can survive. We see that play out again and again in history. You lose your moral foundation and you will lose your society. It just does not fit with human nature and the way we were built by God. So you're exactly right. But it doesn't mean to fear the technology changes, because God gave us brains to solve problems in ways nobody could envision. Our responsibility is to shine a light so the cockroaches that want to use it for evil purposes, for their own control, dominance, power, and money, cannot hide. And that the world can see what's going on, because and this goes back to getting out of some of these secrets that classify things that should never be classified, and then it becomes a cancer that metastasizes and grows, and is not revealed until there's a catastrophe or a disaster. So there's so many levels here of the human race waking up to the fact that they've been enslaved on the information domain, on the technology domain, on the innovation domain, and we have constipated the human race from making progress since World War II because of these dynamics.
Well, it's amazing to me, the just a little media accountability. I mean, we're growing. We have 13 channels across the world, but just that shining some light in certain states like Georgia and Florida, I mean, it really upsets the apple cart, because they're used to dominance, as you said, information wise, and that has to be just broken completely.
Amen.
Yeah.
And they're becoming sensitized to it too. We had an instance just in this past week where we put something out and literally had several reachbacks from legislators, a couple of which were saying, hey, wait, I didn't vote for this. So they're reacting saying, I don't want to be, I'm not going to get anywhere near that third rail. I don't want to be there. And to your point, we, with listening to Todd now for several years, he always goes to, we got to make sure we're getting the truth out, because that's the foundation of everything that we're doing.
So this is why everybody that talks about fifth generation warfare and what is old is new, meaning that deceiving your adversary subtly and insidiously is the most efficient way of having your will, because if their mindset and their understanding of truth is shaped in the right way, they are acting against their own self-interest and in the interest of the person that can deceive them. So information and the knowledge of your strategic environment is the most important thing. And without that, all the energy in the world, all of the technology in the world will just play into your enemy's hands. And what we have is a world community that is trying to use our advantages against us, meaning our open society and our innovation spirit and our congressional method of yearly budgets. All are being played so they can insidiously enslave us and gain advantage to use it at the time of their choosing. So we information is the foundation of all of that, and that's what's coming to light. People are starting to see that. Wait a minute, Russia isn't as bad as people have been told. Russia can be our friend, and they can be a valuable partner. China, the same way. The Chinese people are beautiful. The Russian people are beautiful. Oftentimes, it's individuals, oligarchs, or people with great money that are the puppet masters of others that are perpetuating their advantage at the price tag of human progress.
So you mentioned great civilizations. The Persians are another one. Iran. I hope we do not get in a war with Iran. I think the regime can be taken down from the inside. What say you, as a commander of massive fighter forces yourself?
Yeah, you see this with President Trump, and this is the thing that most Americans, by the way the movies have shaped the art of war, do not understand that national security, people in uniform, are really in the art of peace. That the moment there's violence, you have failed, because you have failed to deliver a superior strategy that can win without firing a shot. And this is because it's done on the information domain and the energy domain, the economic domain. And this is why the conversation is so valuable. So yes, with Iran, there is no reason we cannot get to a peaceful resolution. And President Trump talks about that every day. In fact, recently, even more so. The Iranian people, there is a path to peace without violence. If we can start talking and actually communicating. But what you hear is the people in control don't want us to talk. Imagine that. You can't even talk.
Yeah.
And when you can't talk, then you misunderstand. And when you misunderstand, it drives fear. And when you have fear, you have stupid decisions. And then you're at war. And when people look back, they question, how the hell did we get here? Well, it started by the information domain not even allowing us to talk, or you are framed as an enemy of America, which is as idiotic as saying you can't talk to your neighbor because they are your enemy. When they are your neighbor, they're your friend, they're your community. And if you don't talk, I guarantee you there'll be trouble.
Well, the pushback against the Trump administration talking to Iran was massive. It's still going on, actually. Bill, you got anything else you want to ask?
I do. So I was thinking a moment ago, I believe it's Arthur C. Clarke that said that any sufficiently advanced technology is likely to be first seen as magical, because people don't understand it. They haven't seen it before. They don't understand the foundation of it and so forth. You've touched on a couple things that just have people tied up in knots going, what? Did I hear that right? One of which was the ability to travel quickly, apparently. I think I've heard previous discussions on something that might touch on this, referred to as a fast team or fest team. And I'm not sure they're the same or even overlap, but I wanted to ask you if you could, within the bounds of where you can go, could you expand a little bit on this? People are finding it fascinating.
Yeah, there's all kinds of questions. And I hear everything from people thinking we're talking about teleportation machines like you have in Star Trek and all that. But this is really very simple. When you take a look back at what we did even in the 80s and 90s with vertical takeoff and landing vehicles that can go up to an altitude, it doesn't have to go into full space, but it goes up to an altitude where the air is so thin that you can travel at 25 times the speed of sound. And so now and they proved it. And Elon Musk is proving it right now. Now he's trying to go all the way into space, which is harder, but he's going to get there. You can see the progress he's making. But even right now, from technologies that were proven back in the early 90s, we could put people into a machine, we could take off, and in 7 minutes or less, they're in the mesosphere where there's so little air that they can move at Mach 25, and they can move anywhere on the planet in less than an hour and land vertically, whether it's on a barge or on land, and it's safe, it's effective, it's been proven, but we have never put the money behind developing an economy to be able to travel with that kind of speed anywhere on the planet. But if we did, it would be like the airlines, like we did with the early airline days, Pan America and Pan Am, and Boeing and others. American put its thumb on the scale of aviation and created an economy that changed the world. So when I say you can travel with non-development capability that's already been proven, that you can get in a machine and take off and fly anywhere on the planet. And these machines, use 100 times fewer moving parts than a jet engine. They use a 10x less fuel. They fly at 25 times the speed of sound. And so they're more efficient, they're more effective. They have been proven decades ago, yet we ignore it because the airline industry and the industry of current terrestrial and air travel is so powerful that the government never puts its thumb on the scale of these new technologies.
So to your point a few minutes ago, so many things are, we get stuck in the paradigm, and for sometimes economic reasons, we don't want to move away from it, because you've got all these folks that say, no, that won't be good for our company, for our organization.
That's right.
We're seeing things like that now in these legislatures around the country, choices being made that are clearly not in the best interest of people in progress. They're in the best interest of the entities who can bring the biggest stacks of dollars, unfortunately.
That's why human nature is at the foundation of this lack of progress. But information can help that, because if America can get back to its roots, where it was the pioneering, innovative, self-sufficient, bold country that was willing to take prudent risk to usher in new technologies that help untie the Gordian knot of past problems that get developed in the industrial age. The sky is the limit. That's why we're the shining city on the hill. That's why every country I talk to is praying to God that Trump is successful, because if they believe that if President Trump cannot break the back of the media internationally, of telling lies, of being in the pocket of these rich people that have the control and the money, and if he cannot usher in a new era, the golden age, that they're all screwed too. Because they don't have the power or the culture of innovation that America has, because it's about the human spirit, and they fear us. Other countries are scared as hell of Americans, and they admire us because they're not allowed to do it in their culture, or they are afraid to do it. Mm-hmm. But not in America until recently. The woke, DEI, critical race theory ideology neuters this sense of aggressiveness and power and the individual spirit God gave us to change fate with our brains and our heart, but leading with our heart. And that neutering is intentional. It makes a weak country, and a weak country can be perpetuated to be the slave of these people that have control.
Yeah. So speaking on DEI, I'm specifically worried about our Air Force. I mean, it's sick. So are we on the path to fixing it or not?
I'll tell you, Pete Hegseth, that is his #1 goal, and it is going to be great. And you bet it's going to be on so many levels. But these things take time. That seeped in. You and I got to see that early on. I saw it already starting to come in back in 2009 and 8. As soon as Obama got into office, we saw this starting to creep in, and it was horrifying to watch. And so it has been masticized, for the last decade. Trump came in and was able to make a short-term correction, but then exited. And now that he's back in, we can finish the job. But it will take time, and it's going to take some guts to fire the people. Yeah, to fire the people that need to be fired and hire the people that need to be hired.
So another Air Force question. Fighters and drones, the new what is it, 6th generation fighter and drone warfare. Are we on the right track to harness that? Because a lot of what's happening in Eastern Europe is just fascinating, and I'm not sure we're there. What do you say?
Yeah, so this is where it's really hard and, in fact, important not to pick winners and losers. You have to plant many seeds of innovation and then see which one actually is novel and useful. And when I say useful, I mean affordable and solves the boundary condition of why it was created in the first place. So when I take a look across again, one of my jobs in the Air Force was being the director of requirements for all combat air forces. And back then it included communication, and so what I will tell you is there's a lot of pockets of innovation out there. And what you see revealed is only the tip of the iceberg. Okay. And there are unclassified and classified things happening. But the real problem, of course, is there's still a subtle leveraging to not put too much money behind an idea that is disruptive to the current paradigm of congressional districts and caucuses that have people working on a certain thing in a certain area, because it means those people would have to be retrained to a different job, and that politician would not be looked upon favorably because families don't want to have to change. We don't like change. So it is a garden of innovation within the American system, both on the classified side and the unclassified side. The public just sees the tip of the iceberg, but still not enough aggressiveness is being put on those technologies that are showing solutions that disrupt enough to leapfrog past where our enemy is going. So space is the perfect one, and why it's such in the central hub of the conversation, because we're trapped in a paradigm where we make better satellites, but China has a superior strategy of building infrastructure and logistics in space to mine helium-3 and bring it back to Earth and fuel 1,000 years of dominance in energy by China at pennies on the dollar of anybody else using fossil fuel, solar power, or any other method of, or hydrogen, which has its own dangers. So you can see how, we have work to do within the government, because we are not ushering in disruptive technologies to leapfrog our adversaries on the strategic level, not just the tactical level. And it goes back to Alexander the Great and the amazing quote, in the art of peace, which are those in uniform. Amateurs talk about weapons and tactics and toys. I add the toys. Professionals talk about logistics, because logistics is about affordable power projection over time to outlast your enemy, because there's no decisive battle. There's no allure of battle. There's no shock and awe. If you screw over a culture, they're going to resent it, and they're going to wait until they're powerful enough to have revenge. And so violence, again, just begets more violence. And that's why President Trump is awesome, because he is building peaceful communication with these people that the fake news decries as the enemies of America, when in actuality, they can be partners in a brighter future.
Wow.
Completely agree. Bill, you got a last question?
Sure. So I think that many people will be encouraged, probably drawn to research some of the things that you've touched on today. Are there sources or places that you would suggest people look to learn more, so that they can kind of come up to speed, and in whatever sphere they operate, they can try to help support this?
Yeah. So what I would suggest, I want two things they need to do. One, they need to do their research, and two, they need to start getting comfortable with artificial intelligence. And now there's two types of artificial intelligence. And again, they can dig into this, but there's those kind of machines like Chat GPT that have a person behind the curtain that's manipulating and kind of shaping an ideology and shaping answers that may be deceptive, they may be wrong, and the individual may not know it. Then there's the type of AI engines that are essentially, I call it democratized, or they are decentralized, where you are in control of telling the AI what values and morals you want baked into their ideology and their approach, and helping you dig through the data. And to not fear AI, because AI will never be creative and it will never be visionary. Those are things God gave us that no machine programmed by a human being. It looks creative, it looks visionary, because it can move so fast and it can devour so much information so quickly. But even quantum will only be a tool for the human vision and creativity. So what I suggest your viewers do is, start with Grok 3 on X. And start using it, okay? And buy the upgrade for $30 a month, and really start seeing what it can do for you and whether it lies to you, and start finding the boundaries, because all of them, we are like teenagers with AI, and it would be like somebody with a horse and buggy being so afraid of an automobile that they wouldn't even tinker with it or try it out. You can try it out at affordable price points. So use it to discover these things we're talking about today, and get smart, because the only thing that's going to save America is a population that takes their citizenship properly and with weight. And that is, they have to research the stuff on their own, and they need tools to help them do that. And when they can triangulate truth with guys like you and other media that's out there that's actually doing good things, the bastards that are trying to deceive us and steal our future and enslave us will not be able to hide.
That's great.
Well, Steve, I think it's providential, but I think our class went through something that most people did not and will not in their lifetime. And I think we were forged for some type of leadership role. And I've been disappointed in a lot of my classmates because they just didn't stand up and have the courage. But wow, just great to hear another 86er get out there and say the right things.
Well, this is why we created the company we created. The Space Built is the name of the company that I'm CEO and chairman and co-founder of. And Dennis Wingo is our chief technology officer, who's the genius behind everything. And it's because we are building the infrastructure and the logistics in space to be able to beat China to this economy that they're dominating right now, and we are not. Moving away from just more elegant satellites that do the same thing, single purpose, looking down, helping the joint force, which is all good, but ignoring the deep blue ocean of the commerce of space. And one last point, General Rich Comer, he pinned on my lieutenant bars at the academy. He was my very first teacher, and he is one of the mighty men of our age. So I'm glad you have him on, because he is the man that motivated me to stick with this Air Force despite the dysfunction I could see growing, because he said, if everybody jumps ship, only the rats are in charge, and you got to stick around and help. even if it comes at great personal cost. So Rich Comer is a great friend. I'm glad you are talking to him, and listen to him closely. He is wise.
Well, he was my commander. He was actually my English instructor at the academy, and I went to him, and he was a helicopter guy, and I didn't realize his background, that he was, a war hero essentially.
Yeah.
And I talked to him about going into the special operations, which I did, but then he becomes my squadron commander at the 20th SOS, and then ends up being the Air Force Special Operations Vice Commander. But and our audience will know, but he was on the last combat mission of Southeast Asia on the MiGWeb, and then was on the first combat mission in Southwest Asia in the Gulf War. So quite a span. But yeah, and when I walked into the squadron at the 20th, he said, "Sit down, Captain," in his office, and he said, "I got 3 things. 1, be combat ready. I don't care about the paperwork. Be ready to go fight tomorrow. 2, don't screw around with your buddy's wife when he's deployed. And number 3, don't lie to me, or I'll out process you on the steps of the squadron." And that's kind of stayed with me, but fascinating guy.
So you and I have that in common too. He was my first English instructor. And in fact, the first instructor, that was the first class of the day of the first day of the freshman year. And I remember the books he had us read, like Watership Down, and all of these leadership books. And I can remember him, I thought I was a pretty good writer, and he gave me a C- on my first paper, and it was a great wake up call. I eventually got an A in the class, but he made me work for it, and it was the best thing that ever happened, because it created this mentorship where he could teach me a few things about what a stupid, young, aggressive kid I was, and how much humility I needed to inject into my life to be useful to people and to God.
Fantastic. Maybe we're in the same class. Bill, do you got anything else? You done?
No. Just a wonderful session, and superbly valuable information for us and for our folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
good luck, and have Good Friday. Have a wonderful Easter weekend.
You too. Take care.